Hi, it's Matthew McAllister here, and today I want to talk to you about patience. Perhaps one of the most important qualities a musician should possess is patience. But I think it's the least talked about quality. And I think this is probably because it's not exciting. It doesn't sound interesting. It's not like, getting a big break and making your career overnight, like an overnight success. It's something that we associate with a very slow process. It's very time consuming. And people might think sometimes it's a bit tedious or it's a bit boring. But if you want to have a career in music and make it as a musician, you need to have patience. And if you're lucky enough to be born with some patience, you then need to understand how to develop that patience and how to protect that quality. Because having patience, for me, is one of the most important qualities that every good and successful musician that I know, they have this quality. They possess it in abundance. So on this topic of patience, it's really important to understand that patience itself, the act of being patient, I don't see it as something inactive or passive. I actually see it as a very deliberate and thoughtful choice. So don't confuse being patient with hanging around waiting for something to happen. Don't sort of confuse patience with being motionless, like not doing anything, not practicing, not thinking about music, not preparing to practice better the next time. You have to start thinking about patience in a very different way to the norm, so you can use it as a very active role in your practice. Now, maybe you've hit a wall, maybe you've got to something in your practice and it's just really difficult and it's not getting any better. Maybe you're falling into that trap of watching some video on YouTube. Maybe you have a child prodigy who's playing the piece a million miles an hour and sounds like it's effortless to them. Believe me, that child prodigy has a lot of patience, and those around that prodigy have had a lot of patience to help get that person to where they are today. When you first start learning an instrument, often you get a huge amount of reward for very little practice. This is totally normal. Often people can grasp the basics of an instrument really fast. Maybe in a month or so, even a few weeks, someone can get the basics of posture and position down and they can start to make some really good music. So fast forward a few months and they're playing through some easy pieces. Maybe within half a year to a year they're playing some intermediate pieces. Maybe their whole musicianship hasn't developed to that level, but they can produce a really good sound on an instrument and they're already making really excellent progress. So what's that? That is limited amount of practice but a huge reward. Now, maybe your teacher starts to notice this and ramps up the difficulty of what they're giving you in terms of repertoire. So now you might be looking at something that's more technically challenging and much more musically challenging. The reward for your practice time is going to change and it's not so gratifying. You've had that experience of it being super gratifying for so long. You practice maybe for an hour and you make a huge amount of progress. Now we can be talking about you practicing for a day, 2 days, a week, a month, and making a really tiny incremental progress on a piece. Not so gratifying, and it doesn't sit with that feedback loop of gratification that you've got in your previous study. And that's where your attitude has to change. And your attitude towards patience and towards letting things take time is what's going to really help you improve in these moments. Don't get frustrated. Don't think about giving up. Understand that this part of the process takes a lot longer. For me, when I see students working on really, really difficult repertoire, if they can take that time to make those tiny, tiny incremental improvements when they're working at that very top level of repertoire and that top level of difficulty, that's a difference in going from being a good musician to being a great musician. And it is absolutely an effort worth making, but it takes a lot of time. Another example of where patience is crucial to musicians is in taking time to rest and consolidate all the work that you've done in the practice room. When you're practicing, your body can get very tired, but it's not only your body that should get tired, your mind should get tired as well. And sometimes I'll sit with students and at the end of a practice session, yeah, physically they're very tired, but I'm not sure mentally how tired they are. And this can be for all sorts of reasons. Now, focus is really hugely important, and if you're not rested, it's very hard to focus, and it's very hard to have an attention span that can go for a long period of time. And this is what's required when you're working on larger scale works of music. So just take the mental approach out of it, even think physically. If you're doing something hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month, it's taking a huge toll on your body. It could be taking a toll on your fingers, muscles, tendons, back. It could be stressing the vocal cords, the diaphragm, the lungs, the embouchure. No matter what instrument you play, or if you're a singer, you're taking a huge amount of toll and stress on your body, practicing over and over and over again, trying to achieve that perfection in a piece. So it's essential to rest. When you're resting, even sleeping for example, you're consolidating so much of that work that you have done in your practice room. It helps your memory hugely. Now, when you're practicing in the short term in that practice room, memorising fingerings or phrasing dynamics, and you're going over and over that repeated exercise to try and retain the information, it's going in, but it's going in very short-term memory. It's going in there, but it's not necessarily bedding down. Getting good rest and getting good sleep will help it move into the longer term memory, and then you can recall it and retain it in a different way. It's not so immediate, it's absolutely something you can rely on. So having patience when it comes to memorization is absolutely crucial to being really able to recall that information when you need it under stress, say if you're playing in a concert or an exam or even in a competition. Like most of the other qualities needed to be a good musician, patience is something that can be learned. You can practice it. Good, healthy, sensible habits about how you apply patience and when to be patient. They'll help you realise your goal of becoming a good musician. People are not naturally patient. We all are quite impatient. We want it now and we want it easily. Well, it's not going to work for music. And if that's the kind of approach you have and that's the attitude you have, I would suggest choosing another career, because every musician I know, every really good successful musician I know, they have patience. Maybe they didn't have patience in abundance when they started out, but they've learned to develop their patience. And it's the key to having a long, lasting career in music. Anyway, good luck with being patient. I've got somewhere to be. See you later.